Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to Season 1 of the Pro American Late Model Series. Tonight, we are kicking off round 10 out of 12 at the new Smyrna Speedway up in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, just a little bit down the road from the Daytona International Speedway. Coming in at 0.48 miles or 0.77 kilometers in length, this is not the shortest track on the schedule by any means, but one of the shorter tracks that we've been to this season. And after going to the Indianapolis Raceway Park, Stafford, and USA International Speedway earlier in the season, it is going to be a little bit of a change of pace for these drivers to be coming back down to one of these shorter tracks on the schedule. 200 laps going to be the distance tonight, so just further reinforces that this is one of the shorter tracks, as the past couple of races have all been 150. Looks like we got about 12 drivers registered for the race here tonight, so should be a bit of a fun one. That said, drivers currently making their way down to the speedway for their first heat race of the evening. So let's take a look down there and see what we got for our first starting lineup of the evening. Starting out on the pole of heat race number 1, that's going to be the number 12 of Mr. Kenny Tripp. And to his outside, going to be the 45 of Mike Sukup for Dropping Bombs Racing. Back in P number 3, that's going to be the 72 of Will Salamander Salamone, with John Friley in the 126 rounding out that second row. Back in position number 5, that's going to be the 19 of TJ Moon, the driver driving the Redhead Racing entry, making his first ever start of the season here tonight. And finally, rounding out the 6-car field here tonight, that is going to be the 6 of Tommy Mitchell, who is not driving the Great Crush entry anymore. He is now running a Little Caesars and Mountain Dew Energy paint scheme. So maybe the new paint scheme will bring him a little bit of luck. Sometimes that's just how drivers go. They need a little bit of change in scenery to get things to go their way. 8 laps going to be the distance for this heat race. 6 cars on the field. iRacing.com pace car is off the speedway. Let's see just what these drivers have to give each other for this first heat race. Mike Sukup, getting a pretty good start on that outside line. The rest of the outside line, not so much success. Sukup falling back into P number 2. He's filing it down in line just like that. It looks like the rest of the field gonna be following suit. So far, only position traded on that restart, that was between TJ Moon and John Friley. Moon gaining 1 position on the driver of the 126 Camel entry on that initial start, and now looks like for the time being everyone is going to be playing it a little bit safe with each other. But you can see, looking around this speedway, not a whole lot of room to negotiate once we get this full field running out here. No risk of elimination tonight for any of these drivers. We do not have enough cars in the field for that here tonight. The limit, of course, as always, with the Pro American Late Model Series is 22 drivers. So we're a little bit shy of that tonight. Everyone comfortable to run however they please in their heat race. But that said, there are some points up for grabs in these heat races, so they do still matter more than just your starting spot. And coming into tonight's event, the top 5 drivers are all under a blanket in terms of points. Quite literally 1 or 2 positions in terms of finishing positions apart from each other. So a very big deal for some of these drivers. Gerard Lawrence, Kenny Tripp, Brandon Kiger, Joshua Dube, and a little bit further back, Mike Sukup, all very much in contention for the championship, and every single one of these points is going to count for these drivers. That said, everyone right now pretty much single filed out. 3 laps to go, going to be making it 2 to go that time by as Tripp crosses the line. And the front 2 cars of this heat race are both drivers that really are depending on these heat race points to try and just get any sort of edge in this championship battle. After all, this championship not just for bragging rights. There is actually a cash prize and a real physical trophy on the line for these drivers at the end of the season, so everyone really is going to be pushing their cars as hard as they can to try and get these last couple of points in these last 3 weeks. That said, Kenny Tripp going to be taking home the first heat race win. He will be starting this main event on the front of the inside row. Now heading on down straight to heat race number 2, no hesitation, we're getting things going right here, right now. Starting out on the pole of heat race number 2, that is going to be the 85 of Mr. Brandon Kiger. It is outside in the 66, that is Brent Mex. Back in P number 3, that's our current championship points leader, that is the 27 of Gerard Lawrence, with the 37 of Art Hendren to his outside, rolling out in P number 4. Rounding out our second heat race for row number 3, that is going to be the 28 of Mr. Jason Branch in the America's Navy entry, followed by the 9 of Joshua Dube to his outside to make up row number 3. So 12 car field here tonight for our main event. Not the biggest field that we have had this season, but definitely still a plenty big field to put on quite an amazing show for us here this evening. But before we get ourselves too excited for the main event, we do still have one more heat race to get sorted here this evening. We all just have to see, will the outside line in this second heat race be able to get a bit of a better start than the inside line did, or than they did last heat race? Because Mike Sukup, he got a good jump on the outside, but the rest of the field really lagged behind on the restart. Iverson.com pace car is off. Green flag up in the air again, and looks like the story is just about the same. Mex got a pretty decent jump on the initial start, but the rest of the inside line fell back pretty quickly. Side by side down the backstretch, that is Mex and Jason Branch battling it out, and just behind them Dube and Hendren. Both drivers that are stuck up on the outside line seem to be getting the short end of the stick here. Now, well, whether or not that outside line rubber's in, that's trouble. That's Joshua Dube losing it. Joshua Dube's around, and will he be able to get it going? Looks like no. He's going to take the jump to pit lanes. That's Joshua Dube's heat race over with. No caution going to be coming out because of that. 6 laps to go here tonight. Brandon Kiger in the lead of this heat race. Gerard Lawrence just behind. Like I said, Gerard Lawrence, he is the championship leader coming into tonight's event, but only by just a couple of points. A small enough amount of points that actually winning this heat race could probably make a difference in flipping some positions around in the championship standings. Of course, the main event is where the real big ticket point scoring is going to be, but right now the standings are so close between these top 4 drivers that simply winning a heat race could be enough to move them up or down a position. 4 laps to go though. We are halfway through this heat race. Brandon Kiger holding on to the lead with not much difficulty. Kiger, one of those drivers that are currently in the championship 4, and you can see why he is leading this race with a pretty comfortable gap to Gerard Lawrence. Lawrence getting a lot of pressure from behind from Branch though. Branch currently being scored back, all the way back into the 14th position in the championship standings. He's not been able to attend every race this season, but when he has been able to attend, he has put some pretty strong runs together in that number 28 machine, and currently looking to set himself in P number 3 in this heat race unless he can find a way around Lawrence in these final 4 corners. The white flag is up in the air. He's got the nose there. He's going to dive it down low, pulling up alongside, and contact. That's both drivers around. And that's going to allow Brent Mex to bring it home P number 2 in this first heat race, and Brandon Kiger is going to take home heat race number 2's win. What the finish to that heat race, not exactly what any of us are expecting. So that's going to be Brandon Kiger starting on the outside row for this main event and also picking up a couple of bonus points to his name. That said, we are going to take a short break while give these drivers a moment to get themselves warmed up and ready to go, so don't go anywhere, race fans, and we will be back in just a second. Alrighty, race fans, just like that, we are back. Qualifying in the books, heat races in the books, and now that 1 minute warm-up session has been taken care of. Whether or not these drivers are actually ready to go remains to be seen, but that was their last opportunity to do the last bit of prep work they need to do. We've got 12 cars on the start grid here tonight, 12 cars looking to take home a trophy here this evening, and potentially shake up the championship point standings in these last few races. Now, continuing the trend from what we've had for the past couple of weeks with the randomly generated starting spot that will win a cash prize if they take home the win. For the past 2 weeks, Art Hendren was lucky enough both times in a row to roll the starting position, but he was not able to take home the win, so now we are up to $15 for this starting spot winner, and that is going to go to Will Salamone starting back in position number 5. If he manages to take home the win here tonight, he will be picking up a $15 cash prize. That said, let's take a quick look at our starting lineup. Kenny Tripp on the pole with Brandon Kiger in the 85 to his outside. Row 2 going to be the 45 of Mike Sukup and the 66 of Brent Mex, followed by Will Salamone in the 72, the driver in question that needs to win for the cash bonus. Gerard Lawrence, championship leader, back in P number 6. TJ Moon in the 19 in 7th. Art Hendren in the 37 and 8th. John Friley in the 126 and 9th, followed by Jason Branch in the 28 in position number 10. 11th going to be Tommy Mitchell and Joshua Dube rounding out the field here tonight. Green flag up in the air. We are racing for 200 laps at the new Smyrna Speedway. Brandon Kiger off to a strong start. That's the first time we've seen the outside line work so far this evening. And he's got a pretty decent lead just like that from it. 2 by 2 back in the mid-pack of the field. That is Sukup and Mex side by side, and then Lawrence and Salamone side by side. Just behind them, that's TJ Moon. That is the rookie driver here tonight in that number 19. He's got himself all the way up about halfway through this field here tonight. So, drivers all over the field, a little bit of trouble there. That's the 66 making contact with Lawrence there. He manages to hold on to it, but that was a very scary sight, especially this early into the race. Everyone still rolling though, and frankly, that alone is half the battle. Now side by side into turns 3 and 4, TJ Moon, that's going to get around Brent Mex. Mex having a bit of a hard time on that outside line in that 66. He gained a couple of positions early on in this race, and now he's fallen back 5. Just like that, he has already gone back to the 9th position from starting 4th, and that's Art Hendren around. Art Hendren's going to lose it around. He's going to get it rolling again. No caution going to come out for that spin, and then he's going to spin again. He slams on the brake. He's got it this time. He's got it rolling. 5 laps in the books. No yellow flag out this evening. Art Hendren's got it rolling, but now he's gotten all the way back to the back of the field here tonight. He's got some ground to make up now. Back up in the mid-pack, this is the battle for the 6th position between Mr. Jason Branch and TJ Moon. Moon up into the outside wall just a little bit. He's going to scrape it a bit, but no damage on the side of that 19 to write home about here tonight. And a little bit of a nudge, that's going to send him up high, but he's still got it rolling. And going up high like that down the front stretch is a scary sight to see, because here at the new Smyrna Speedway, the front stretch is a bit of a particular shape. It's really hard to see on the actual camera, but the front stretch wall is actually curving inwards very slightly down the entirety of the front stretch. It is not perfectly straight, so if you're not paying attention, holding your wheel perfectly straight on that outside line can actually end you up in the wall if you don't pay attention to where it is you're going. New Smyrna, a track, probably one of the only tracks on the iRacing.com platform where the front stretch retaining wall isn't perfectly straight, and that's been known to throw drivers off. So we will have to see, will one of these drivers be eating the wall at some point here this evening? Hopefully not. I don't want anyone to have to shell out the wallet to repair their race cars, but you never know. Short track racing like this gets pretty intense pretty quickly, and you never know how things are going to work out until you get to the end. Looking further up in the field, Mike Sukup still holding on to P number 3, looking to try and get himself further up in the podium, but where he is right now is a pretty nice spot to be for the driver of that number 45. Of course, having the championship leader on your tail is never necessarily a good feeling, but either way, he's got some speed under the hood of that number 45 machine, and we'll just have to see. Maybe tonight is the night that he takes home a win. Of course, only 12 laps in the book. It is much too early to call it. But I'm just saying, the 45 has been showing a whole lot of speed all season. He just needs to put one complete run together, and he could get a trophy to his name. He is currently in the top 5 in the championship point standings, only about 30 points back from Joshua Dube, which sounds like a lot, but it's really not. And a little bit of contact there. That was between Branch and Salomon coming out of 4. Salomon got a little bit into the rear end of Branch. He's going to back off just a bit now in that number 72 machine, but he did start initially in the top 5. He has fallen back a position. Salomon's back in the 7th spot in the championship standings. He is back at 866 points. Championship leader is at 1,087, so a little bit of a disparity there between Salomon and the championship leaders right now. Gerard Lawrence, of course, has 4 wins to his name, currently at 1,087 points. Then Kenny Tripp, 2 wins to his name, back in position number 2 with 1,052. Then Kiger with 1,035 in 3rd, and Dube with 1,034 to his name. 1 point of difference when drivers are potentially taking home 100 points every single race is a pretty massive deal. And that just goes to show how small the gap really is between Dube and Sukup. 30 points. 30 points is a matter of just 3 or 4 positions in a single race. So while Sukup, he does have a little bit more of a disparity than these top 4 do have from each other, he is still very much in the championship picture. And it all comes down to what happens here tonight and what happens at the final 2 races of the season. Next week, we're heading to the North Wilkesboro Speedway, another really unique short track with a whole lot of history behind it. And then after that, we round things off with a 250 lap event at the Five Flags Speedway in 2 weeks from now. So not a whole lot of time left in this season. We are putting the closing chapters on Palm Season 1, and I'll tell you what, things are only going to get more intense from here. These drivers, they have a lot to be trying to strive and win for. Of course, always having the bragging rights of being the driver who won the first ever championship season of a league But there's a cash prize and a physical real-life trophy on the line as well for the championship driver. So a whole lot these drivers are going to be gunning for in these next couple of weeks. And frankly, I think we're all here for it. I know that I certainly am. I am incredibly excited to see what these drivers are able to put together out on the speedway in these final 2 weeks. Brandon Kiger still out here holding on to the lead here tonight in that Busch Beer number 85. Kenny Tripp just behind him. These two drivers, again, P2 and P3 in the championship standings right now. These two have had, dare I say, a little bit of a rivalry this season. I feel like I find Kiger and Tripp duking it out for position, be it for the lead or sometimes even back in the back of the field. These two drivers always seem to find a way to be side by side, battling it out day in and day out. These top 5 cars all under a little bit of a blanket until we get a bit of a gap back to Salomon in that 72. Salomon a second and about a quarter behind the lead lap field, or I guess better yet, the lead pack here. Currently everyone's still on the lead lap except for Art Hendren. He pulled it down into the pit lane after that initial spin back on lap number 11. Let's actually take a minute to go on board here. Let's ride on down with the 72 and see what he is seeing down here on this a little bit under half a mile speedway tonight. That was riding on board with the 72 of Will Salomon. You could hear just how much throttle manipulation he's just having to put into this car and how much he's having to wheel it to get through these corners. Those brake rotors glowing bright red on that number 72, and he is really pushing this car with everything he's got, and you can see how loose he's getting and how loose the rest of the field is too. Everyone on this speedway is having a little bit of difficulty with handling problems around the track. But that just makes it just that much more exciting. And you saw as well how the front stretch wall, it curves in towards the racing surface and is bound to catch someone off guard at some point. All of these drivers, of course, put in plenty of time to get ready for this race, but eventually someone is going to get caught out by it. Side by side down the front stretch, this is Jason Branch and Mike Sukup. Branch battling his way into the top 3. This is the first time in a while we have seen the number 28 battling up here in the podium, but I'll tell you what, tonight could very much be his night. Branch has been putting on some incredible runs throughout this season, but for the past couple of weeks just has been running into unfortunate incidents that have bumped him back down a couple of places. But here he is up here in the top 3 and gaining on our race leaders. Gerard Lawrence going to be going down low and getting around Mike Sukup in that 45. Never mind, no he's not. Sukup is going to get the run off the corner. Probably much more than both Lawrence and I were expecting there. Lawrence potentially might have lifted just a little bit to let that 45 back on in the racing line. Lawrence, a driver that we have seen hit fuel numbers sometimes that were just completely out of the realm of our belief this season, and fuel strategy and pit strategy in general has sometimes been his flying ace when it comes to getting wins. 4 wins in the books for Mr. Gerard Lawrence here this season, and Well, right now in the long run, it looks like he is falling back positions and not having the fastest hot rod in the world. I am absolutely willing to bet that once we have pit cycles go through, we're going to see this driver break back up into the top 3, potentially into the lead of this race. That said, we're only 39 laps into this race, actually 38 laps into this race. We've still got a whole heck of a long way left to go tonight. And it's honestly way too early to be calling anything about where these drivers might be finishing. It's all a whole lot of speculation right now going off of how these drivers have driven it the past couple of weeks. But Lawrence picked up the win last week at the Lucas Oil Raceway. He picked up the win at the Stafford Motor Speedway. And then he also picked it up back at the USA International Speedway and Langley Speedway as well. So those are the 4 wins that Lawrence has under his belt. And who knows? That's quite the wide variety of tracks. He's got some short tracks on there, tracks even smaller than this one, and he's got tracks that are nearly, not quite, but nearly double in length of this one. So a little bit of an all-rounder, that number 27 machine. And we'll just have to keep an eye on him and see what he manages to pull out of his sleeve here this evening. Further up in the field, Jason Branch closing in on Tripp just a bit, and Tripp as well catching up to our race leader of Kiger. They have been roughly equidistant for most of the past 42 laps, but slowly but surely the gap is closing. Tripp is setting faster lap times than Kiger is. Not by a lot, but he is setting them just a tiny little bit faster than Kiger is. And actually, looking at the overall fastest lap of the race, the fastest lap of the entire race goes to Gerard Lawrence with an 18.79, but we have 5 drivers with an identical best lap time right now. Brandon Kiger, Kenny Tripp, Jason Branch, Brent Mex, all have an identical best lap time. All of them at 18.88 as their best lap times. Mike Sukup putting the hammer down. He's starting to catch back up to Gerard Lawrence. He started back up in the podium, and he wants to get himself back up there. He has fallen back 2 positions. He lost a spot to Lawrence. He lost a spot to Branch, but now it is time for him to go on the offense and try and catch back up to the race leader. Mex getting a position on Salomon. That 72 looking like it was down on power a bit there. He's got it rolling now, but he did look like he was a little bit slow there. That said, side by side further back in the field, this is the battle for the 8th position between TJ Moon, John Friley, and Joshua Dube. These 3 cars all duking it out to break their way into the top 8 tonight. Dube in that 9 car is not a driver that we've normally seen this far back in the field, but New Smyrna is a bit of a different short track from some of the other ones we've been to, and every driver has their strengths and weaknesses, but it's definitely interesting to see this number 9 machine back here because Dube is a driver that is currently 4th place in the overall championship standings, and he has multiple podium finishes to his name. He's not managed to take home a win quite yet this season, but he's been a generally very fast driver, and currently he is residing back in the 8th position right now with the 126 of John Friley and TJ Moon both right behind him. TJ Moon trying to see if he can't potentially get back up to John Friley and put himself back in the top 10 of this race, but we will just have to see if he manages to have the speed to do it. That said, he's now got himself back up in the top 10 because Jason Branch has come down to pit lane. He's going to be the first taker for the first pit cycle here tonight. Looks like going to be 2 tires on the side of that number 28 machine, potentially even 4. Sure enough, 4 tires for Jason Branch. He might be trying a bit of an alternate pit strategy here tonight, because I did not expect drivers to be coming down pit lane only 50 laps into this race. So Jason Branch might be trying something a little bit unexpected here tonight. Brent Mex also going to be coming down pit lane. That's driver number 2 on the speedway that's going to be coming down for his first pit stop. He might see what Mr. Jason Branch had up his mind and is going to be saying, you know, that's not a bad idea. I'm going to try that too. That said, the field getting a bit spread out from these pit stops, and only going to be 2 tires for Mex. So Mex going to be coming out on the speedway in front of Branch still. It's now Brandon Kiger comes down the pit lane. So that is our race leader making his way down the pit lane. So maybe my fuel calculations were off. Maybe drivers did only have about 55 laps of fuel, but I was expecting them to go at least to 75, if not a little bit longer. But these drivers are proving me wrong. They're all coming down to pit lane in the next couple of laps, and that's going to have Kenny Tripp now being scored as our race leader for the time being in that number 12 machine. Of course, that all depends on how the pit stops end up playing out. And hey there, Tommy Mitchell. That was a little bit too close for comfort. Mitchell down on pit lane. Gerard Lawrence, Mike Sukup both down on pit lane as well. So that was the rest of your podium so far on the speedway, making their way down to pit lane. Looking around, it does look like pretty much everyone has the idea to be taking 2 tires, if not 4, but everyone's at least taking 2. Gerard Lawrence comes back out. He had an incredibly quick pit stop. Mike Sukup just behind. Will Salamone coming down pit lane now as well. And Tommy Mitchell coming out. Tommy Mitchell having a bit of a slower stop than the other driver. It looks like a 4-tire stop for Mitchell. TJ Moon coming out. TJ Moon, 2 tires. And TJ Moon getting a little bit harder on the gas than maybe he intended to. He got a bit squirrely and a little bit down into the grass, but he's got that number 19 rolling. Maybe a little bit more heat in the tires than he would have liked now, but he's got it rolling now. And that's going to leave Tripp, Doob, and John Friley as the last 3 drivers that have not yet come down to pit lane. It does look like Kiger will be our race leader yet again once the pit cycles finish working their way out. John Friley in the 126 going to be making his pit stop. Kenny Tripp down as well. That just leaves Joshua Doob in that number 9 as the last car remaining on the speedway that has not made his way down to pit lane. He's going to be scored as our race leader now. Looking down at Kenny Tripp's pit stop, going to be at least 2 tires. Will he make it 4? Looks like the answer is going to be no. Kenny Tripp's on his way out. Joshua Doob on his way in. More drivers going to be working to unlap themselves now as Doob makes his way down pit lane. Unless he gets out in the next 12 seconds, Kiger will be getting back into the race leader. Sure enough, Kiger is our race leader. Gerard Lawrence just behind though. There's still a battle going on for the lead of this race. 62 laps in the books. Call it about 138 left to go. So we've crossed a quarter of the way through the race, but we are not even halfway yet. There's going to be another pit cycle for sure, if not 2. Depending on how cautions and fuel strategies play out, we may end up seeing 3 pit stops here at night, but I do think that 2 is the more likely occurrence here this evening. But now that things have cycled out, we do have a couple of drivers stuck down a lap. John Friley going to be 1 lap down. Tommy Mitchell also a lap down. Art Hendren still being scored 3 laps down from that initial spin back on lap number 11 that made him have to go down into pit lane. Lawrence very, very quickly closing the gap on Kiger. It is, like I said before that pit cycle, I expect that after cars go through their first pit cycle, Lawrence is going to be in the top 3. And sure enough, where do we find him? Rapidly gaining on our race leader and potentially looking to try and execute a pass in these next couple of corners. Speaking of pit stops, though, Art Hendren just came back down pit lane for the second time this evening. So it looks like Hendren actually never pit up until this point. He must have taken fuel when he had that initial spin earlier in the race and just decided to stick it out until he was running empty. So that's going to be pit stop number 2 for Hendren. If we don't include the spin, this is at least Hendren's first initially planned pit stop. He's currently being scored back in the 12th position. And he's coming back out of pit lane now. Looks like 2 tires for the driver of the 37 machine. This isn't necessarily the end of the race for that number 37 driver. There is multiple lucky dogs here in the Pro American Late Model Series. So if a caution comes out, the first 3 cars a lap down will be given waves around instead of just the first car a lap down. So that will give Riley and Mitchell pretty much guaranteed put them back on the lead lap if there is a yellow, and Hendren, that could very easily put him back on the lead lap as well, depending on how this race plays out. That said, we have had multiple races this season here with Palms that did not have any cautions, so these drivers, they can't be banking on that to happen. But if it does happen, they at least have a little bit of a safety net to work with. That said, this battle for the lead, it is getting heated. These 4 cars here, Tiger, Lawrence, Sukup, Tripp, all 4 of these cars on the lead lap, all 4 of these cars battling for the position, all 4 of these cars battling for the lead. And all of them pretty much an identical distance apart. Last time by, they also all set nearly identical lap times, only a few thousandths of difference between these 4 drivers. And Tripp, he's going to make it down low. He's going to go side by side with Mike Sukup, side by side, going down the front stretch, side by side into turns 1 and 2. Sukup is holding on to his position on that high line. He doesn't have enough to clear Tripp, but he is putting on a battle with that number 12 car. That said, a little bit loose off the corner. He's not going to have what it takes to hold on that time by. He's going to try and maybe cross him over, though, in that 45. Never mind. He's going to back out of it. He is going to be patient after all. Let cooler heads prevail. Only 75 laps into this race. We have 125 left to go. There's 125. Make that times 4 more opportunities for Sukup to potentially get himself back up into the podium here tonight. That said, he has to push a little bit hard because Tiger, Lawrence, Tripp, these are the top 3 drivers in your championship standings, making up the top 3 positions of this race. The only driver that Sukup is behind that is not in this battle is Joshua Dube, who's being scored back into the 7th position. So if things ended exactly how they were right now, Sukup would potentially move up into the 4th position ahead of Joshua Dube, but not the rest of these drivers in front of him. All 3 of these drivers he has to get around if he wants to move up in the championship standings. He can't just take it easy and finish where he is now. He has to push in these next 120 laps. That said, this battle right here, the closest battle on the speedway by far, this is between Lawrence and Kenny Tripp. Lawrence going to drift it up high a little bit. Tripp looking to see if he can't get the nose down there, and he does, side by side into 1. Tripp looking to try and get himself up into the 2nd position and potentially even try and battle for the lead again. Lawrence, he's stuck up high. He's going to lift just a bit. He's going to let Tripp get on by. He's going to let Sukup by as well. He knows that outside line is not where he wants to be, and the yellow flag is out. There are cars everywhere. That looked like the 19 of TJ Moon, Art Hendren, Will Salamone, and maybe even Brent Mex as well involved there. Looking down here, this is at least definitely the 19 of TJ Moon was involved. The rest of the cars, not so sure about that. But looking at where drivers are in terms of laps, it does look like Salamone, Friley, and Moon will be the lucky dogs here this evening. Let's try and take a look back and see just what happened to bring out this first caution of the evening. Currently looking down at the 19 of TJ Moon. That's the 37 of Art Hendren just down inside of him. Side by side down the front stretch. Hendren going to back off just a bit, but then he's going to go for the move, and Hendren's not going to make it stick. That's Hendren getting hard into the side of the 19. And a couple of more drivers also going to get involved in that. And then the 66, a hard impact for Brent Mex. Mex just not aware that that wreck was happening, and not a whole lot he could do to avoid that. Let's try and get another look back at this. Let's look here. Look at that 37 of Art Hendren. Hendren a couple laps down, so he's not battling for position here. He tries to send it down low and make the pass, and it just does not stick. That's Salomon getting caught up a little bit. Everyone else swerving to avoid. Lawrence picking up a little bit of damage there. And then just a really hard impact for Mex a couple of seconds after the yellow came out. Let's take a look back here and ride on board with Brent Mex, seeing what he saw going into that incident. Gonna ride on board with the helmet mounted GoPro camera, not a sponsor. Mex heading down into turns 3 and 4. Rolling, going down the front stretch. Not a care in the world. He's not aware of what's happening up there. It's all covered by his A-pillar, and surprise, there's the number 18 sitting there waiting for him. So that's going to be some heavy damage for the front end of that 66 that might have to send him down pit lane. And sure enough, that's the 19 of TJ Moon. He's definitely down on pit lane. Brent Mex also down there getting some repairs on his car. Art Hendren going to be needing his crews to look at his car. And John Friley in the 126, he is coming down as well. I don't see any damage on that 126 though, so he might be coming down just to get a little bit of fuel. This might be a scheduled pit stop for John Friley. Sure enough, he is taking tires, so it does look like Friley was planning to come down if a caution were to come out. Friley going to be putting right side tires on, and he's going to be heading back out. So that's going to make it Mike Sukup, Kenny Tripp, Brandon Kiger, the top 3 for this restart. Looks like little Salomon being scored back in 7th place right now. Salomon, of course, he is the driver who is up for grabs for the $15 cash prize. Of course, here in Palms, after the heat races are concluded, a die is rolled. Whatever spot it lands on is the lucky position. In this case tonight, the die landed on the 5th position. So if Salomon takes home the win here tonight, he gets a cash prize. If he doesn't, then we have a check up in front of the field, apparently. No, green flag back up in the air. If he doesn't get the win, another $5 gets added to the bonus, and the die is rolled again next week. So we will have to keep an eye on Salomon and see if he manages to squeak out a win with that damaged race car. Side by side into turns 3 and 4. That is the number 28 of Jason Branch stuck up on the high side. He's fallen back just a couple of positions side by side with Doob now. Doob up 6 positions. It looks like he does have some speed in that car that just needed to get into the later half of this race to really get going in for him. But now he's up in the 6th spot. He's gained 6 positions this evening. Currently, he is the most improved driver right now, as he did start back in last place in that number 9 machine, but he's got it up in 6 now. That's half the field. Now he just has to get up through the other half. Last time by, Mike Sukup, current race leader in that 45, just set the fastest lap of the evening with an 18.73. That is the fastest lap turned all night during this race session. And Brandon Kiger also set his own personal best fastest lap of the race, 18.81. And that's a little bit of trouble. That looked like maybe Salomon? No, not Salomon. Not Tommy Mitchell either. Someone had a little bit off, trouble off the corner. That was actually Brandon Kiger who was sideways off the corner, and now he's stuck up on the high line, falling back a couple of positions. Gonna be sending it down low, going a little bit aggressive with that America's Navy entry, number 28 of Jason Branch, trying to get back up into the top 3 of this race. A little bit of a mishap sent him back a couple of positions, but now he is really digging to get those spots back. That said, he should be a little bit careful with what he's doing. After all, Jason Branch, he doesn't just run the America's Navy's colors for no reason. He actually is a United States Navy veteran, so maybe not the best driver on track to be getting rough and tough with. But you know what? I'm just the broadcaster. I am not going to get involved with any potential rivalries between the drivers out here in this field. That said, these two currently battling it out with the closest battle on the speedway. This is the battle for 5th, technically, between Branch and Dube in the number 9, but including Kiger, and that Kiger is scored up into the 4th position. So technically, this is the battle for 4th between these 3 cars. A little bit of gap between the 3 of them, and then it's Lawrence, Tripp, and Sukup making the top 3 of this race as we run. Getting close to the halfway point. The clock is ticking for these drivers. We might start to see folks get a little bit more aggressive as we get later into this run. After all, we are nearing the very end of this season. Only 2 more races left after this. There's not a lot of time left for these drivers to get themselves any extra points. That said, we did have a pass back in the back of the field. TJ Moon and Brent Mex both stuck down on pit lane after that initial caution. That's going to allow Art Hendren, despite being 8 laps down, to pick up 2 positions. Now he is running up in the top 10. Sometimes it's just a matter of being the little engine that could. Even if the race isn't going your way, a whole lot of damage on that number 37 machine, but he is still gaining spots. He's making it work for him. And you never know, if we have another incident like that again, we could see Hendren gain a couple of more positions. Just gonna have to keep an eye on these drivers and see how things end up playing out. For Salomon, the driver looking to try and win the raffle money, he is currently back in the 7th position with a bit of damage on the right front. I did cut myself off a little bit with how that green flag came out, but basically at the start of every race we roll a die. Whatever number it finishes on is the driver that's in the starting position of that number gets an opportunity to win a bit of a cash prize if they manage to take home the win. If they don't, $5 gets put into the pool and it's rolled again next week, and it just keeps on going until someone finally wins it. So if Salomon doesn't take it home this week, next week it'll be 20. If someone doesn't win it next week, it'll be 25 during the championship event. So we will just have to keep an eye on these drivers. Eventually, someone is going to be the lucky driver to claim it. But right now, Salomon, he's in 6th place. He is the last driver on the lead lap. So it's still doable for that number 72 machine, but he does have some damage to contend with that is not going to make his job any easier here tonight. Coming into this race, Salomon scored back into the 7th position in the championship standings, just 13 points behind Thomas Mitchell, who is currently 1 position behind him. So even in positions throughout the field that aren't for the lead of the race, that aren't for the lead of the championship battles, there are still drivers duking it out for any spot they can get on the championship standings. Because ultimately, everyone wants to be the champion, but sometimes getting a top 3 or a top 5 or even a top 10 is an accomplishment for these drivers. This is a very talented, very skilled field of drivers, and everyone has been working their butts off to do whatever they can throughout this championship season, and I imagine things are only going to be even better in season number 2. Before the next few weeks, these drivers are really going to put everything they have to the test to try and just squeeze out every last little bit of points that they can. Looking back at the cars currently being scored a lap down, this is looking back at 8th place. This is John Friley in that 126 Camel entry. John Friley, the only triple-digit car that is in the field, the only triple-digit car that's been in the field for the past 10 weeks. He is currently running back in the 10th position in the championship standings right now. Looking around him, Albert Hewins is currently one spot above him, and he is not present tonight, so that is a position that Friley will be able to gain. And just behind him, Jonathan Emerson, another driver that is not present here tonight. So Friley might be looking to gain a couple of positions here this evening. Right in front of Albert Hewins, that is Art Hendren. Hendren currently the last driver still in the race. He's being scored back down 8 laps, so potentially, if Friley gains another position or two, he could move up ahead of Hendren as well, and that would move him all the way up to the 8th position in the championship standings. That said, speaking of championship standings and the implications of them, look down at the bottom of the timing and scoring sheet. Joshua Dube has retired from the race. And I'm talking with my camera crews, and no one saw him have any sort of incident. Joshua Dube just pulled it down to pit lane and retired on the spot. So hopefully everything is all good with the driver of that number 9 machine. But that's a completely unexpected retirement from tonight's event, and that's going to allow Sukup to... Well, Sukup currently is leading the race right now, so if Sukup takes him the win here tonight, that's going to basically guarantee that he passes Dube in the standings and puts himself into position number 4 in the championship. So, wow, yeah, no. Dube retiring is a very big deal. That is a driver that is very much in championship contention, that is now guaranteed to finish 10th place at best here tonight. Currently closest battle on Speedway, though, this is between Sukup and Tripp. These are the 2 closest cars on the Speedway right now. Let's ride on board with Sukup and take a look at the rear view camera here. You can see just how close these 2 drivers are to each other on the Speedway here tonight. 115 laps in the books, about 75, more like 85 left to go, and Tripp is not going to make it easy for Sukup. Tripp actually looking down low, not enough run off the corner to be able to make it happen, but now he's going to look down low again, and this time he might have just enough speed to get a nose up under there. No, he is not once again going to fall back, but Tripp is not going to make Sukup's job easy for him. And Sukup, a driver that has had so many good finishes here, but has not been able to bring home a win. There could be a little bit of nerves up under the fire suit of that number 45 machine here tonight. He has a lot on the line here this evening. It's just a matter of holding on for the remaining half of this race. Tripp getting into the wall a little bit there, though. That is going to make Sukup's job just a tiny bit easier. Doesn't look like there's any damage on that number 12 machine, though. Just a tiny little scrape, though. He is really running as close to the wall as he physically can without wrecking that race car. As we look back out on the Speedway, Will Salamone going to be heading back down pit lane. This is his second pit stop of the evening. Salamone and Tommy Mitchell are actually the only two drivers on the Speedway that have not made a second stop yet. So now that Salamone's done here, that leaves just Tommy Mitchell. Mitchell is the only car on the Speedway that has not made a second pit stop at some point tonight. So I would not be surprised if we end up seeing Mitchell down on pit lane at some point sooner rather than later. And sure enough, saying that, there he is diving it down onto pit lane in that Little Caesars Mountain Dew number 6. That's going to be his second stop of the evening, and that will be the conclusion of this second pit cycle that technically started all the way back when that caution flag came out. But now look at this, race fans. Brandon Kiger has gotten himself into the picture of this lead lap battle, and he has some speed under the hood of that 85. He is diving it down, way down low, nearly down below the apron, nearly making it 3 wide off the corner, but both him and Tripp slammed hard on the brakes to try and keep that from happening. Kiger really not afraid to use all of the speedway, but he's trying so hard that he's slowing everyone down, and now Jason Branch is back in the picture. And there's potentially a pass for the lead there. Nope, not going to have to run off the corner to make it happen. Tripp really tried there, but it just was not enough, and now Sukup has a lot to worry about. He knows the car behind him potentially has the speed to get up to the front. And as he pulls it up high just a little bit, could be too much. Now Kiger's battling out for the lead. Sukup now finds himself in a difficult position. Does he keep continuing to run the line that is most comfortable for him? Or does he pull it down and block that low line? He's going to not block. Kiger pulling along side by side with Sukup. And as they drag race down the front stretch, Sukup still being scored as the race leader, but just barely. Side by side again through the corner, side by side for P1, side by side for P3. These 4 drivers, they still have 75 laps left, but they are racing like it is the last lap. And now Sukup's going to lose control of the lead. He's going to dive it down low, though. Try and do a little bit of a crossover. Is it going to work? No, it is not. He does not have the run he needs through the corner to make that happen. And now Sukup finds himself having to be on the offense. It's not all smooth sailing anymore, especially as now Tripp gets around him. That's going to bump him back another position. He was in control of the race lead, but he might have just pushed a little bit too hard. It looks like the tires might be falling off of that number 45. Not literally, but metaphorically. That 45, he is setting considerably slower lap times than he was just a couple of laps ago, and that time by, he was 0.3 of a second slower than Kenny Tripp was. Brandon Kiger also setting roughly the same lap times as Sukup did, though, so Kiger's not going to hold on to the lead very much longer if he's setting those lap times as well. But now that time by, Kiger and Sukup were both faster than Tripp, so it looks like that might have just been as a result of running 2x2 affecting those lap times a little bit, because now everyone in this top 5 battle is setting pretty similar lap times to one another, but also trouble. Tommy Mitchell just went off the speedway and might get a penalty for unsafe pit exit if I just saw him come back on the track how I did. And that said, he's holding it down low, not wanting to intervene with this lead lap battle. Will he pull it back down pit lane, though? Because I do think that Tommy Mitchell might have just picked up an unsafe pit exit penalty. Everyone in the lead sorting themselves out just a little bit. Let's take a look back at Tommy Mitchell. Will he pull it down to pit lane? No, he will not. Race officials say he's good to go. That was not an unsafe pit exit, so he is all fine and dandy. Tommy Mitchell still pushing. Currently being scored back into the 8th position here tonight. After a little bit of a spin coming off of pit road, got a little bit harder on the gas than maybe he intended to. Kiger still holding on to the lead, but Tripp is looking to try and make a pass on the outside. Will it be able to work? It looks like the answer is yes. Tripp is getting a run on the outside of this speedway. Side by sides through 3 and 4, heading down the front stretch. Kiger still going to be holding on to the lead, but Tripp was showing a lot of speed there. He is looking like he could potentially make this outside line work here tonight. Once again, side by side, pretty much that entire lap, though. Look down at a top-down view, you can see just how close these two cars are getting to each other through the corner. And right behind, Sukup and Branch and Lawrence, not out of this battle as well, but right now they both are falling back just a little bit from these two lead lap cars, and there's contact. Both drivers keep it pointed the right way, but Mike Sukup, he had to get hard on the brakes to not get into the 12, and that's going to cause him to lose a bit of ground. And more contact between Branch and that 72 of Salamone. Salamone not on the lead lap right now, so that 72 not battling for position. just kind of cruising around, hoping a caution comes out so he can get waved around. That said, he has 2 laps he has to make up, not just 1, so he actually needs 2 cautions to get back up on the lead lap, or have pit strategy just work out incredibly well for him. Speaking of pit strategy though, Jason Branch going to dive it down onto pit lane in that number 28 here tonight. So Branch going to be making his 3rd pit stop of the evening. What's the verdict for him? Will it be 2 tires or maybe it will be 4? This is probably going to be the last pit stop of the evening. Not guaranteed, but I would expect that this is the last time we see these drivers down pit lane. Gerard Lawrence, Mike Sukup, Kenny Tripp, all down on pit lane as well. What is the verdict for these drivers? Looks like it's going to be at least 2 tires for all 3 of them. Sure enough, all 3 drivers head back on the speedway. Mike Sukup going to be getting the short end of the stick there. He is going to lose a couple of positions to Lawrence and Tripp on that pit stop, but he's got it back out on the speedway now. And now our race leader, Brandon Kiger's down there. Kiger also taking 2 tires, and he's got it rolling again in that number 85. And he comes out battling for the lead. He has to get it up to speed now, but he's still being scored in the 2nd position after that pit stop, so he didn't lose anything from that. But now it's just a matter of, can he catch up to Tripp in these next couple of laps, because these first couple of laps after putting on new tires are probably some of the most crucial for these drivers, because some of the fastest laps of the event are set right after putting the fresh tires on, after the speedway has been rubbered in and brought up to temperature. And looking at the timing and scoring sheet, last time by, nobody broke any track record, so they are not as fast as they were right now with these new tires on as they were during pit cycle number 2. And in trouble there, Lawrence nearly losing it out of the corner. He was not expecting the car to be that loose, but he's got it pointed in the right direction. Some very good driving by that 27 to keep it pointed in the right direction here. And as they cross the line, again, nobody anywhere near setting their best lap times right now. Actually, most drivers were setting laps in the 19-second range. That is nearly 2 to 3/10 of a second off their best, even on new tires. So as we get into the late stage of this race, we may see this come down a lot to pit strategy and just who can nurse their tires the best for the remaining 55 laps of this race. Because while they may have an extra set down there on pit lane to put on if they absolutely need to, you don't want to come down pit lane again if you can avoid it. Checking back in, further back in the field, Will Salamone scored back into position number 6. He is currently on the lead lap, but he has also not come down for his 3rd pit stop yet, so we should most likely see Salamone go back down a lap unless a caution were to come out when he ends up going down pit road. So his chances of taking home the win and taking home the $15 bonus are not looking particularly good right this moment. But like I said, certainly not impossible. Let's say a caution did come out. He takes tires later than any of our leaders do, which would put him on newer tires, and for the most part that means faster tires than any of the cars in front of him. A yellow wrecks the field back up. Salamone could still very much make it work if the cards fall in his favor, so he definitely should not be counted out just yet. It's just, will the cards fall the way he needs them to potentially set something up here? Further back in the field, looking back at the rest of the drivers, there are still a couple of drivers that are chugging away out here on the speedway. That is the 126, John Friley, back in position number 7 in that camel entry. He's still rolling around the speedway. He is still getting that seat time in, getting himself ready to go to North Wilkesboro next weekend and potentially pick up a couple of more positions depending on how things go for these race leaders. Tommy Mitchell also, he's still rolling around the speedway. He is currently a couple of laps down, but he has not retired yet. He's still got it rolling. That said, last car still actively in the race. That is Tommy Mitchell. Art Hendren has not retired from the race. He has not called it quit yet, but he is down on pit lane and has been down there for 9 minutes now. So a big if we see Art Hendren return to the show. But the slowest that Art Hendren can finish right now is 9th, because Doob, Moon, and Mex, they have all retired from the race. They have packed up their cars and they have gone home for the evening. So you can't lose any more positions from 9th at this point in the race. You are guaranteed a top 10, and that alone can be something to celebrate sometimes. Currently looking at the battle for the 3rd position here. Mike Sukup looking to try and get himself back on the podium. He's going to try his best to just scrape away what he can with this race. Another podium finish would still be an incredibly solid finish for the 45 and the Dropping Bombs racing team as a whole. That said, he has to get around the championship leader in order to do it. That is no small task. But he has had a lot of speed under the hood of that 45 throughout tonight's event. He did lead a couple of laps, and he could potentially lead a couple more. Looking down low, he's going to round Lawrence with not much issue. Lawrence ready to let that 45 push his way out to the front and potentially burn the good off those iRacing branded tires, and that will be his time to strike. That said, 42 laps left. That's not a whole lot to be gambling with. Lawrence does have a bit of a comfortable gap between himself and Branch, though a whole nearly 3/4 of a second. That said, Branch is closing the gap fairly quickly in that 28 machine. He was a 1/10 of a second faster than Lawrence that time by, so not impossible to see Branch get up into striking distance of Lawrence, and that would bump him all the way back down to 5th. And that would have Tripp, Kiger, and Sukup up in front of him. Tripp and Kiger are right behind him in the championship standings, so Lawrence really needs to stay in front of those two drivers if he wants to stay in the lead of the championship. That said, everyone in this field is hanging on to a whole lot of what-ifs right now. Looking around the field, now the closest battle is actually currently that of the race lead between Tripp and Kiger. 0.3 of a second between these two cars. That's still a couple of car lengths for Tripp to be holding on to this race lead. And Tripp, he does have 2 wins under his belt. He's looking to make this number 3, and he could just potentially make it happen. And that would, I believe another win right now would be enough to put Tripp in the lead of the championship standings, which would be quite the sight to see, because Lawrence has been the championship leader for quite literally every single race here tonight. And looking throughout the field, so it's 4 wins for Lawrence so far, so this would be number 5 for him if he manages to take it home. Tripp, 2 wins, looking to make this number 3. Kiger has 1 win, looking to make this his 2nd. And then the only other driver that has wins right now is actually not present. That is Tyler McRae. McRae has 2 wins to his name, the same amount as Kenny Tripp. But McRae is all the way back in the 13th position in the championship standings right now. McRae has some work he needs to do in these last 2 races. He hasn't been able to attend the Pro American Late Model Series full time, and I think that's pretty much what's done him in, because the races he has attended, he's finished either in first place, as he has 2 wins, or in the podium pretty much every single time. So Lawrence Another driver that is just incredibly fast, but just hasn't had the season he was looking for. Of course, Lawrence, another Droppin' Bombs Racing Team driver, he drives along with Sukup, who is back in the 3rd position right now, and he is actually gaining on our race leaders. As Tripp and Kiger battle it out here, that is giving Sukup the opportunity he needs to make up a little bit of ground, because Tripp and Kiger going side by side, having to run alternate lines to try and attack or defend their positions, all that is doing is collectively slowing both of them down and allowing Sukup to catch up slowly but surely in that 45. And in these next 30 laps, we could see Sukup be a major contender for the race lead again. Of course, that all hinges on what these two drivers decide to do in these next couple of laps. Again, whole lot of what ifs on what happens in these next 30 laps, and we have seen all sorts of shenanigans in the closing chapters of the race. We have seen leaders take each other out. We've seen teammates take each other out. We have seen entire race teams run out of fuel with 5 laps to go. There is a whole lot of what ifs that could throw chaos into these remaining lead lap drivers. That said, looks like Brandon Kiger is going to be scored as the race leader coming out of turn number 4, and guess what? Travis Sukup has introduced himself to this show yet again. He is going to be looking to try and get his way back up in the lead, and he might just have the race car to do it. Tripp scraping the outside wall just a little bit in that number 12. He's been doing that a pretty decent bitch, and Tripp trying to do the crossover, and Sukup's having to check up to avoid it. That was very nearly a bit of a collision there. And guess what? There's battles happening further back in the field too. Branch just got around Lawrence. Lawrence is falling back a bit. Lawrence might not have the tires that he needs to get to the end of this race. And now Tripp is contesting for position number 2, and a little bit of a bump there. Tripp giving a bit of a bump to our race leader to try and get him to hurry up and be able to defend that position, and it's going to allow them to hold on to position for a little bit longer. Sukup just does not have the run off the corner he needs to get up into P number 2. And then, once again, I said it was going to happen. Tripp eats the curved wall. He just dug a little bit too hard, and he scraped the curving on that outside retaining wall on the front stretch. But either way, it didn't even hurt him, because now he's battling for the lead again. Despite that impact, it wasn't enough to cause major damage. But side by side for the lead, and the top 5 are right behind these two. Branch and Lawrence, they see what's going on here, and they want a piece of this action. They see these drivers duking it out for the lead. They see the potential for these drivers to make a mistake, and that's when they need to strike. 24 laps to go around this speedway. Tripp still way down low on the low side. Sukup having to go a bit high to avoid it, giving the feeling that Tripp might overdrive the corner and had to drive a little bit safely. But Branch and Lawrence, they're both now very much in this battle as well, and a little bit of contact side by side, door to door, going down the backstretch. These drivers, the gloves are off. Punches are going to be thrown, be it with fists or with a couple ton race car, one or the other. Either way, these drivers, they are not afraid to do whatever it takes to take home the win here tonight. 2 weeks left in the season after this. There is no more time for playing nice. If these drivers want to get the points that they need to take home the trophy in 2 weeks, they have to do everything in their disposal here. And a little bit of contact again between Sukup and Tripp. Tripp getting a bit loose down the front stretch, but he holds on to it. Not really easy to spin your car out going straight, so not surprising to see that he kept it stuck. But now he's fallen back to position. Now he has to defend from Branch, because Branch is absolutely ready to strike on this number 12 as well. And now Sukup, 20 laps to go. Will it be enough to catch up to Kiger and get his first ever win of the season? He's got his nose there. He's pulling down to the inside, but it's just not going to be enough. And now Tripp is back again. Tripp rebounded from that little bit of an incident like nothing happened whatsoever, and now they're side by side down the front stretch again. 18 to go as we cross the line. Clock is ticking. And I'll tell you what, Salomon, Friley, Mitchell, they are all hoping that one of these drivers messes up and they get their lap back. But right now, 5 cars on the lead lap, and all 5 of them are battling for the lead of this race. There is no, 5 cars and they're all a couple of seconds apart around the speedway. All of the cars that are on the lead lap right now are in camera shot. And with 17 laps to go, I would imagine there's going to start to be a little bit of chrome horn utilized to make some passes. And just like that, there's a little bit of chrome horn right now. That's Tripp and Sukup making a little bit of contact nose to tail. Not going to be enough to upset him, but there's another one. Tripp getting into the rear end of Kiger. Tripp's trying to get Kiger out of the way now. Everyone really just trying to figure out something to work differently and something to get the car where it needs to be on that final lap, because ultimately it doesn't matter where you are right now. It matters where you are in 15 laps. And it's just a question of how are you going to get there, and that's a big impact. Sukup's going to be pulling it down to the low line as he gets rear-ended by Jason Branch. That's going to bump both of them down, and now both of them have a pretty decent chunk of ground they have to make up to get back up to the race leaders. That's going to put Lawrence back in the podium just like that. Lawrence was all the way back in 5th, and now, surprise, he's running with the top 3 and looking to try and battle for the lead. Sometimes it's just the little mistakes like that that are all it takes to capitalize on to get home in the podium, and sometimes even a win. Sometimes all you need is one little misstep by the race leader, and that's all it takes for you to get a win. That said, 12 laps to go now, and Lawrence is pushing. He still has speed in that number 27 car, but so does Sukup. Sukup's got it pulled down low. He's looking to try and get around Lawrence and get himself back up into the podium. Not going to have the speed that he needs this time by to make it work, but I'll tell you what, all 5 of these cars could still potentially take home the win now in these next 11 laps, depending on how the cards fall. Mitchell coming back out on the speedway. He scored back in the 8th position, 5 laps down. Still 5 cars left on the speedway, 8 cars left in the race as a whole. 10 laps to go. Big double high five up in the air. It's time to do or die for these top 5 late model drivers. These top 5 late model drivers, all but one, battling for the top 5 of the championship. 9 laps to go. Just a couple more times around the speedway, and Gerard Lawrence is pulling it down to pit lane. Lawrence might not have enough fuel to make it to the end of this race. That might just be that for the driver of that number 27 machine. Unless a yellow comes out, that could be the end of his race right then and there. Kiger and Tripp still battling it out though. Quite the twist of face, and Branch is also down on pit lane. Branch doesn't have enough fuel to get to the end. That just leaves Kiger, Tripp, and Sukup as the last 3 cars on the lead lap. Do they have enough fuel to get to the end of this race? Sukup's down on pit lane. Sukup doesn't have enough fuel. That leaves just Kiger and Tripp. Do either of these 2 cars have the fuel that they need to make it these last 6 laps around the speedway? Because it's now up to these 2. These are the only 2 left that can do it. Everyone else is either stuck laps down from race damage earlier in this race, or they just ran out of fuel, and now they're a lap down. If a yellow were to come out right here, right now, Lawrence, Sukup, and Branch would be put back on the lead lap, and we would be restored to the battle that we initially had going for the top 5. But what are the chances of that happening? I'm willing to bet it's slim to none. That said, there is a battle still on the speedway. This is between Branch and Sukup for position number 4. They are both down a lap, but they still are battling for track position that 28 and that 45, both duking it out. 3 laps to go. Does our race leaders have what it takes to make it to the end? Have they hit the fuel number that they need to hit? Because if not, it could spell disaster for both of them. 2 to go. As we cross the line, Kiger and Tripp, the only cars left on the lead lap. The question is, will either of them sputter out? Have they hit the fuel mileage that they need to hit? Because the rest of the lead lap cars didn't. And this isn't the first time that we have seen a miscalculation. White flag up in the air. Do they have what they need to get to the end of this race? Kiger holding on to the lead, getting a little bit of a bump from Tripp. And looks like Kiger is going to take home the win here tonight in that number 85 Tripp right behind. And I might be mistaken, but I think I heard sputtering across that line. I think Kiger is out of fuel. I think it may have come down to that last lap for the number 85. Sure enough, he's sputtering out. He ran out of fuel on the last lap. Kiger, he might be the master of fuel strategy, or he might just be the luckiest man alive. But Brandon Kiger is going to take home his second win of the Season 1 of the Pro American Late Model Series. Now don't go anywhere, race fans. We're going to get a quick interview with your top 3 finishers here in just a moment, but we'll be back in just a second. So don't go anywhere, race fans. We'll be right back.
The broadcast.
Alrighty, race fans, welcome back. And before I even get started on this interview, Mr. Brandon Kiger, would I be correct in saying I heard your car sputtering across the line?
It did, man. We come out of turn 4, I think, with 0.2 gallons, and I just tried to get in the line that I thought Kenny was going to hold and help him push me across the line there.
I'll tell you what, Mr. Kiger, you're either the most genius fuel strategist I've ever seen or the luckiest man alive, but either way, you got it done. You've got win number 2 under your belt. How are you feeling now that everything's said and done here tonight?
I feel pretty freaking awesome. I love this racetrack, New Smyrna here. I'm pretty awesome at anything I run here. I knew coming in was going to have a good chance to win, and I just honestly, I was nervous at the end there, coming down being fuel strategy. I tried to play it out to where I was hoping I had a lap to the good, and we was on the good lap. You know, I don't know how else to say it. I just got pretty lucky there on fuel strategy. I ain't never played one that close and that good myself. I've lost a lot of races in this season in Palms already because of fuel strategy, and I finally one went my way.
Yeah, finally the cards played out in your favor. I'll tell you what, if anything had gone different, that could have been disastrous for you. But we saw several other drivers on the last 2 or 3 laps. They also ran out of gas. So it looks like everyone was playing a pretty risky fuel strategy here tonight, but you managed to make it work. And with win number 2 under your belt, that might maybe potentially be enough to move you up a position, maybe not. But either way, another win to your name, especially this late in the season, is definitely a huge deal.
Yeah, I was coming here looking at these last three races. Tonight was a big track for me because I'm very good here in anything, like I said. And next week at North Wilkesboro, I'm pretty solid there. These are two tracks I marked on the calendar that I wanted to win at. I love them, and I think we can do it again next week. I think we should have been here a couple more times throughout the season, but like I said, finally a pit strategy race and fuel strategy played in our favor once this season, thankfully. But I think I should have been here a couple more times this year. But last week was a struggle. I'm glad to get that monkey off our back. I was terrible last week, and this week really done us a good favor.
Yeah, you definitely put on a heck of a run this week, and I like your confidence heading into North Wilkesboro next week. And I'll tell you what, there's always season 2. Everyone has a little bit of their monkey back on their back at some point, and if you don't get the finish you want this season, I have a whole lot of faith that season 2 is going to play into your favor.
Yeah, we've run season one out here pretty strong, stayed in the top three. We want to finish season one out very strong. I think we can finish in the top three. Hopefully, get to that number one spot. We'll see what we can do. But Gerard and Kenny's going to be hard to beat, and I wish them both the luck. I don't wish them no bad luck, but hope to be able to beat them out for it.
Well, no matter how the cards fall, I think we have a very exciting 2 weeks in front of us, both up here in the booth and for everyone out there on the track. But of course, before I let you go and celebrate and get ready for next week's event, the red carpet's out. The microphone's all yours, Mr. Brandon Kiger. Anyone you want to thank for getting another win under your belt?
Yeah, man, I'd like to thank my boys. They hopped in here with like 50 to go. Chase, Kirby, and Shane, they helped me out with the fuel strategy there. I appreciate them, and like to thank Matt and you for putting on the broadcast. And I just enjoy everything. It's good, clean racing here. It's a lot of fun.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out, and I look forward to seeing you next week at North Wilkesboro.
Yes, sir. Thank you, buddy.
Alrighty, and finishing back in P number 2, Mr. Kenny Tripp. You got 2 wins to your name, and you were incredibly close to making this number 3. What do you think you might have done differently to have gotten around Kiger in those last couple of laps?
Well, first of all, I just gotta say what a great race. I had a horrible race last week and definitely turned it around this week, but I didn't push him hard enough. I know he was really close on fuel. I ended with zero point 0.2 gallons left, so I told him I did his burnout for him. But I just didn't push him enough. I should have pushed him probably like 5 to go. I should push him a little harder. But all in all, good night. Good qualifying, good heat race. So I think I gained a couple on Gerard, so that's a plus. But the top three here is that's what it is. It's going to come down to us three, unfortunately. And like Brandon said, I don't wish anyone bad luck, but I definitely want to beat them fair and square.
Yeah, you all have been putting on an amazing season, an amazing race here tonight, and I have nothing less than great expectations for what y'all will be able to put on in these next couple of races. Next week, heading to the North Wilkesboro Speedway. How do you feel about going to an oval with elevation changes?
Well, I can tell you in a street stock, that's probably my best track. This is a little bit more traction, a little bit more horsepower, so I think I'll be fine. Um, I just got to concentrate on the heat race, the qualifying heat race. I got to get as many points done, Gerard, because God, that guy is so consistent. Like when he pit, I thought sure enough, and then Sukup had to pit, and then a bunch of them pit. So cycled back to him back up to third. But I thought me and Brandon were going to gain a good amount tonight, but we didn't. But 1 point here, 2 points there, we'll take it.
Yeah, y'all are incredibly close, and I think y'all only managed to make it even closer. So next week, and especially the week after that at Five Flags, every single point is going to matter. And frankly, I really look forward to seeing what y'all will be able to do. Of course, before I let you go and celebrate getting another podium to your name and let you get ready for whatever you need to do to get ready for next week, the microphone's all yours, Mr. Tripp. Anyone you want to thank for getting that 12 machine up here on the podium?
Yeah, I got to thank a lot of people. I got to thank Brandon Varney for convincing me to get triples, and this is my first week with him, and what a difference it makes. I got to thank Josh Doobie, Maine Mobile Truck Service. My dad watches every week. My wife will let me do this several nights a week, and just you and Matt and Steven for just putting on a great show. You guys let us have good input, and you listen, and this league is definitely going places. And for you guys watching out there that want to get into this, Palms League is definitely a league. If you guys want to join, I'd love to have you.
Good deal. Well, normally this is the part where I say I look forward to seeing you next week, and while that is very much the case, I think I also just gotta say good luck to you, man. You have your work cut out for you. Everyone in the top 5 of this championship has done amazingly this season, and it's going to come down to every single last position between y'all, and I am incredibly excited for it.
Oh hell yeah! It's gonna be every lap is gonna be a grind. Every point's gonna be a grind. It's gonna come down to last race between at least the top 3 positions in points. But have a great night, and we'll get back at it next week.
Sounds good. Have a good rest of your weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next week. And finally, rounding out the field here tonight, Mr. Gerard Lawrence. Boy, man, what a race that was. How are you feeling now that everything is said and done here tonight?
I mean, that race looked like a lot of fun. Unfortunately, for the most part, I wasn't a part of any of the fun. We took some damage there with that one caution. I just had too much rear brake in it and couldn't get it stopped, and drove into them with my right front. I'm not complaining about it either, because if I would have went in straight, my night would have been over. So the fact that I tore up the right front a little bit is what it is. But after that, I mean, the car just didn't really rotate the center the same way. So I was letting people go for the most part, and then I don't know, about 10 to go. They were all racing side by side and backing up to me, so I was able to pass Mike and Jason, which put me in a good position. But I knew I had to pit, so I was just hoping that everybody else had to pit too. And unfortunately, Kenny and Brandon had their fuel strategy down tonight.
I don't know if you heard, but they had their fuel strategy down quite literally to the last lap. Kiger was sputtering across the line, and Tripp finished with 0.2 of a gallon left in the tank. So if there was one more lap left in this race, you might have been able to have had it. But either way, another podium is a great finish, and the championship battle has only gotten ever tighter heading into North Wilkesboro next week.
Yeah, definitely. I was thrilled to get as close as I did to Brandon and Kenny, but anytime you're losing points, you're giving them that much more to work with. So I hate it, but um, it is what it is at this point. I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing, trying to finish races, and got to work on qualifying. That's for sure. I screwed that up horribly today. Um, Lost a bunch of points there. But we'll see what happens going into next week.
For sure, and it's good to have a plan and know what you need to do to improve to get that championship home for you. But of course, before I do anything, I did get a message from Race Control, and it sounds like finishing spot number 3 got the $5 bonus money. Didn't you get it last week as well?
Yeah, I did. So, yeah, no, huge thank you to Matt and Steven again for doing that. It really is awesome. And to win it 2 weeks in a row, I'm thrilled. So I'll probably I don't know, I'll probably put this money right towards entry for this series next year, or they're starting up a truck series here soon, so I might be putting it towards that too.
I'll tell you what, I can't condone gambling, but it sounds like if anyone should do it, it should be you, because things are working out in your favor, and even if this race didn't necessarily go how you want it to go, you've had some pretty fortunate events this season, and heading into North Wilkesboro, I would imagine the luck is going to continue and come to your way. But either way, I'll let you go and celebrate and get prepared for what is absolutely going to be a grind for the next 2 weeks. But the microphone's all yours, Gerard. Anyone you want to thank for getting that 27 up here on the podium again?
Yeah, I mean, I want to give not a shout out. I'm sorry. I want to congratulate Brandon on the win, and you know, Kenny on getting second. You know, it really looked like a great race. I wish I could have gotten up there. I want to thank Engines by Alsasser, EP Million Sleeping, Lafos Performance Glass, and I want to thank you again for putting on the broadcast. And last but not least, Steven and Matt again. For the money again. I appreciate that. That's awesome. It's a bonus. Um, but more importantly, for putting the league on and doing such a great job uh, as race control every single week. So huge shout out to all you guys and thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for coming out, for Gerard, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
I hope so. Have a good week.
Alrighty, race fans, you heard it here first. Your top 3 finishers here this evening. And I'll tell you what a race it has been. What a season it has been. Before we sign off, let's take a look down at our race results for the evening and get one last look at how everyone's doing. Brandon Kiger taking home the win in the 85. Kenny Tripp, Gerard Lawrence, second and third. We just talked to the 3 of them. Finishing back in P number 4 is the 45 of Mike Sukup, followed by the 28 of Jason Branch, rounding out the top 5. Sixth place, going to go back to the 72 of Will Salamone, with John Friley in the 126 back in 7th. Eighth, going to go back to the 6 of Tommy Mitchell, riding that new paint scheme here tonight, with Art Hendren in the 37 back in P number 9. Rounding out the top 10, going to be the 9 of Joshua Dube, with TJ Moon and Brent Mex rounding out this 12-car field here tonight. That's about all we got here from the Pro American Late Model Series at the new Smyrna Speedway. Next week, round 11 out of 12 at the North Wilkesboro Speedway. And I'll tell you what a championship battle we are going to have in these next 2 weeks. The points championship has only grown tighter. We are quite literally in a position where we have 2 weeks left in the season and pretty much not just, a win, but a single finishing position dividing our top 3 drivers, with only 2 or 3 finishing positions dividing 4th and 5th from the championship of season 1 of the Pro American Late Model Series. These next 2 races are going to be an absolute grind for these top 5 drivers that are probably going to have a whole lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And definitely, you want to be there for it. Same day, same time, Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. But for now, that's all we got here from the Pro American Late Model Series. As always, gotta give a big thank you to all of y'all for tuning in, supporting the channel, supporting the league. It means a whole lot to me up here in the broadcasting booth. Means a whole lot to the drivers out there in the field, having folks cheer for them day in and day out. But for now, that's all we got. Be sure to tune in next week for an incredibly close championship battle that will quite literally be coming down to the wire. And I'll see you all next week. Have a good evening, race fans.